Welcome to the Wealth Wisdom, where money has history and knowledge becomes power.
Imagine waking up one morning to discover that the money in your wallet is no longer worth what it was yesterday. Not just a little less, but almost nothing. Your groceries cost 10 times more than last week, your savings evaporated overnight, and the promises of your government feel hollow. It sounds like a nightmare, but this nightmare has repeated itself throughout history, not by accident, but as a powerful tool used to reshape societies. Hyperinflation is not just an economic anomaly. It's a mechanism that has toppled empires, altered civilizations, and silently rewritten the rules of power. And the story of how it works might shock you more than you realize. To understand hyperinflation, we have to start with the basics. Money is supposed to be a promise that if you exchange your labor, your goods, or your trust for currency, that currency will hold value. But when those promises are broken through excessive printing of money, reckless debt, or political manipulation, the entire fabric of society begins to unravel. Hyperinflation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It grows like a silent predator, exploiting weaknesses in financial systems, political instability, and human psychology. And the consequences, they are far more profound than empty wallets. They reshape civilizations. Let's take a journey back in time. The seeds of modern hyperinflation were sown centuries ago. But the most instructive examples come from the 20th century, when the world was both industrialized enough to produce mass currency and politically volatile enough to exploit it. Consider post-World War I Germany. The Treaty of Versailles demanded crippling reparations, and the German government faced a choice: default and risk humiliation, or pay with printed money. They chose the latter, and what followed was a textbook example of hyperinflation. By 1923, the German mark had become virtually worthless. At the height of the crisis, a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Families burned banknotes in their stoves because it was cheaper than buying firewood. Entire pensions vanished overnight. But here's the twist that history books sometimes gloss over. This economic catastrophe wasn't just a side effect of war, it became a tool to reshape society. Hyperinflation destroyed the wealth of the middle class, created fertile ground for political extremism, and shifted power toward those who could manipulate the new financial realities. It didn't just punish, it reorganized. To understand why this happened, we need to look at the mechanisms. When a government prints money to pay debts or on projects without corresponding economic growth, you have more currency chasing the same amount of goods. Prices rise. People lose trust in the currency, so they try to spend it as quickly as possible, accelerating the cycle. The velocity of money spikes, and inflation feeds on itself. But in Germany, the effects went beyond math. They triggered social collapse. Savings earned over decades were wiped out. Businesses failed. Workers demanded higher wages, which fueled further inflation. The social contract was breaking, and in that chaos, new power structures emerged. Germany is the textbook example, but it's far from unique. In Hungary after World War II, the peng collapsed at a pace even faster than the German mark. At one point, prices doubled every 15 hours. Picture a farmer trying to sell wheat. By the time he collected his money, it could buy half as much as it did that morning. The government eventually replaced the peng with the forint, but not before hyperinflation had completely altered the nation's economy and social hierarchy. Hyperinflation, in just numbers on paper, it's a civilizational reset button. To see the full story, we have to go even further back. In the Roman Empire, debasement of currency, reducing the silver content of coins, was an early form of hyperinflation. By the 3rd century, emperors were minting coins with almost no intrinsic value. The result was that ordinary Romans lost trust in money. Taxes became unbearable, and local economies collapsed. Cities shrank, trade slowed, and the very idea of wealth shifted from currency to tangible assets like land or livestock. Historians often describe Rome's collapse in political or military terms, but hyperinflation played a silent, devastating role. Money became a weapon wielded by the state, intentionally or not, to reshape society. The origins of hyperinflation are always intertwined with human ambition and desperation. Governments facing war, debt, or political upheaval often see printing money as an easy solution. But history shows that this easy solution carries an almost guaranteed cost, social upheaval, and the effects compound over time. Once trust in money is broken, restoring it is nearly impossible without dramatic intervention. The collapse feeds on itself until society either finds a new currency, shifts to barter, or experiences radical political change. The breaking point in these cases is always striking. In Germany, families were literally carrying wheelbarrows full of cash to buy a single meal. In Zimbabwe, at the peak of its crisis in 2008, a loaf of bread cost 250 billion Zimbabwean dollars. People were paid twice a day just to keep up with prices, and banks became useless. Imagine trying to plan a family budget when money loses value faster than you can count it. And yet, behind the chaos, governments often tried to offer fixes, price controls, forced exchange rates, wage adjustments. All of these measures failed because they ignored the fundamental reality. Trust in the currency had been destroyed, and that is perhaps the most shocking lesson of all. Hyperinflation isn't just an economic problem, it's a psychological one. The power of money depends on belief. Once that belief collapses, society changes, patterns emerge. During hyperinflation, those who can access foreign currency, barter goods, or manipulate the system gain disproportionate power. Wealth is redistributed violently, middle classes are crushed. Civilizations are reshaped without a single battle being fought. History also shows failed fixes are a recurring theme. Germany eventually stabilized with the Rentenmark, Hungary with the forint, Zimbabwe with foreign currencies, and the Romans with reforms of coinage and taxation. But these solutions came at immense social cost. Hyperinflation leaves scars, broken savings, lost trust in institutions, and often, the rise of radical political movements. In Weimar Germany, the instability created fertile ground for extremism, ultimately paving the way for Hitler's rise. This is why hyperinflation isn't just a financial curiosity, it's a catalyst for societal transformation. Fast forward to the modern era, and the parallels are striking. Venezuela has experienced one of the most dramatic examples of hyperinflation in recent memory. From 2016 onward, inflation rates reached millions of %, decimating savings, collapsing local businesses, and driving mass migration. The result isn't just economic collapse, it's a humanitarian crisis, political upheaval, and social transformation. Ordinary citizens have been forced into new survival strategies, bartering, hoarding foreign currency, or emigrating. Hyperinflation acts as a sculptor of society, shaping the very structure of daily life. Even in countries with seemingly stable economies, subtle forms of hyperinflation or currency debasement can have long-term effects. Quantitative easing, debt monetization, and unchecked printing may not create immediate hyperinflation, but the potential exists for systemic disruption if trust erodes. And the patterns repeat. Financial mismanagement, social inequality, political instability. The lessons from history are remarkably consistent and often ignored until it's too late. So, what can we take away from this journey through centuries of monetary upheaval? First, hyperinflation is a tool of power. It's not always intentional, but when used deliberately, it can reshape society by destroying wealth, shifting social hierarchies, and consolidating control. Second, trust is the foundation of currency. Once lost, no amount of printing or policy manipulation can restore it easily. Hyperinflation is as much psychological as it is economic. Third, history is cyclical. While the forms may change, coins, paper, digital currency, the underlying patterns of hyperinflation, social disruption, and power realignment repeat themselves. Recognizing these patterns is essential to understanding both history and the present. The warning is stark. Money is not just a medium of exchange, it is the lifeblood of civilization. When it fails, the consequences are profound. Governments, institutions, and individuals must remain vigilant because hyperinflation is not an abstract threat. It's a historical constant, capable of reshaping the world without a single shot fired. And as technology advances, the speed at which money can lose value and the ways in which societies can be reorganized only accelerates. So as you consider the history of hyperinflation, ask yourself this: are we truly safe from the patterns of the past, or are we simply repeating them in new forms? Are the governments and financial systems we trust built on solid foundations, or fragile promises that could unravel overnight? The stories of Rome, Germany, Hungary, Zimbabwe, and Venezuela are just cautionary tales. They are mirrors, reflecting the fragility of civilization when currency loses meaning. If this exploration of hyperinflation has challenged the way you think about money, power, and society, there's a clear next step. Pay attention, study history, and question the systems you rely on. Knowledge is the first defense against the forces that can silently reshape our world. And if you want to keep uncovering these hidden patterns of history, economics, and human behavior, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because understanding the past is the key to navigating the future. Remember, hyperinflation is more than numbers. It is the quiet storm that can topple empires, destroy lives, and redefine civilization. And by learning from it, we don't just witness history, we equip ourselves to survive, adapt, and perhaps even prevent the next great reshaping of society. History has a way of repeating itself, but those who study it closely may find a way to stay one step ahead. This script is designed for high retention. It opens with a dramatic hook, builds historical context, tells multiple chronological stories of cause and effect, highlights modern parallels with vivid examples, and closes with thought-provoking takeaways and a call to action. If you want, I can also create a scene-by-scene visual prompt guide to match this script perfectly for cinematic AI-generated visuals. So, you can produce a professional, fully storyboarded YouTube video. Do you want me to do that next?